Welcome to the space. When you hear the phrase personal branding, it's incredibly easy to picture loud social media influencers or perfectly curated highlight
Right,
reels.
those exhausting hustle culture posts.
Yeah, exactly. It feels like a shallow marketing hack. But today, we're taking a deep dive into hard data that proves your personal brand isn't vanity at all. It is actually the most critical extension of your executive presence.
And getting it wrong, trying to fake a persona, it literally causes a biological stress response in the people you lead.
Which is wild to think about.
It really is. And we're pulling from a rich stack of sources today to explore why that happens. We have Harvard Business Review research on emotional intelligence, the book Own the Room, and some really extensive longitudinal data on how executive presence has radically changed.
And just to orient us right away, we are framing this session not as some social media tutorial. This is a practice in presence-driven leadership.
Exactly. The mission of this deep dive is to unpack a crucial modern reality. Personal branding requires a highly intentional, careful balance between curating a public legacy and, well, maintaining genuine authenticity.
Because whether you like it or not, as a leader today, your identity is constantly on display. I mean, in a highly connected world, you aren't just managing a team, you are managing a narrative.
Right, and if you don't take charge of that narrative,
The internet and human psychology will just write it for you.
which demands a massive shift from reactivity to responsibility. Historically, leaders could afford to just react to the market from behind closed boardroom doors. But today, you're responsible for the legacy and the presence you project into the world.
You really have to understand that every interaction, online or off, is a data point. It's training people on how to perceive your internal values.
Yeah, but before we even touch the mechanics of building a brand, we have to look at what presence actually means right now, because the definition has completely transformed over the last decade or so.
It really has.
If we look at the data from the Center for Talent Innovation, they surveyed leaders in 2012 and then again in 2022, and we see this fascinating evolution. Traditional executive presence was historically defined by a very rigid, almost exclusively white male standard.
Right.
It was measured by how forcefully you spoke, how imposing you were physically, and, how well you conformed to traditional corporate aesthetics.
It was essentially just an exercise in conformity.
Exactly. It was what Sylviane Hewlett's research identifies as bleached out professionalism.
Bleached out professionalism. Wow.
Yeah, meaning anyone who didn't fit that narrow demographic mold had to systematically suppress their cultural identity. They had to modify their natural speech patterns and just bleach out their individuality to be taken seriously.
And the psychological toll of that, I mean, pretending to be someone else for 40 to 60 hours a week, that is completely unsustainable.
It absolutely is. But the updated 2022 data shows a massive pivot. We've moved away from that traditional forceful executive presence toward true leadership presence.
So what does that look like now?
Well, while foundational traits like decisiveness and confidence remain critical, obviously, traits like inclusiveness, listening to learn, and authenticity have skyrocketed to the very top of the list.
That makes so much sense. We are finally judging leaders less on whether they look the part and more on what they actually do to empower the people around them.
Right. And taking that updated definition of leadership, we can look at how modern tools become essential. Because social media isn't just for celebrities promoting products anymore.
No, not at all.
It is a mechanism for leaders to actively shape their legacy. Sheryl Sandberg is actually a brilliant case study from our sources here.
Oh, yeah. Her transition was fascinating.
Right. When she stepped down as the COO of Meta, she was at a really critical inflection point. She could easily be remembered solely as the hard-nosed executive of this massive, heavily scrutinized tech giant.
But instead, she completely took the reins of her narrative. Like, if you look at her Instagram presence now, she strategically utilizes it to highlight the achievements of female entrepreneurs.
She does. And she features highly specific, deliberate examples. She will post about a Black entrepreneur running a successful dessert company in Tulsa, or, a Lebanese restaurateur building a chic cafe in Montreal.
Okay, let's unpack this for a second. By consistently amplifying these voices, she is actively ensuring her public brand is defined by advocacy.
Exactly. She wants her legacy to be the leader who helped women lean in, and she is using digital platforms to cement that.
Think of it like laying down train tracks. The brand you build online lays the tracks ahead of you, dictating exactly where your career, your influence, and your legacy can travel next.
That's a great way to look at it.
Yeah, I mean, if your digital footprint shows you empowering others, you are building tracks toward a legacy of empowerment. It's an alignment of values.
But, knowing you need to leave a digital footprint of your values and actually doing it are two very different
Oh,
things.
for sure.
Because if you try to force it, you end up sounding like you're just reciting a rehearsed PR script. To articulate your values genuinely, you have to find what Amy Jensu and Muriel Megan Wilkins, the authors of On the Room, call your signature voice.
Which requires balancing two very different frequencies, right?
It does. They use a framework called ACE, standing for Assumptions, Communication, and Energy. A true signature voice is the delicate balance between having a voice for self and a voice for others.
So unpack those two for us.
Sure. So a voice for self means you can confidently demonstrate your authentic value and stand your ground. A voice for others means you can actively connect, listen, and align with your stakeholders.
Okay, so it's a spectrum.
Exactly. If you only have a voice for self, you become a dictator. But if you only have a voice for others, you become a pushover.
Right. And our sources suggest a really practical step for establishing this balance. It's updating your professional bio to include a clear personal brand statement and value proposition. Because your professional story isn't static. Psychology professor Dan McAdams points out that our life stories have to evolve. I mean, you aren't the same leader you were 5 years ago, so your narrative needs to project toward your future self and resonate with new audiences.
And articulating that evolving value proposition is crucial for internal alignment.
Okay, but wait. Writing a personal value proposition for my bio? I'll be honest, that sounds like a recipe for sounding like a corporate robot.
It can feel that way, yeah.
If I sit down and type out, I am a synergistic leader who drives paradigm shifts, I'm going to feel completely ridiculous. It just feels fake.
Well, let's reframe that through the lens of the A in the ACE framework, which is assumptions. The point of writing out your value proposition isn't to create some buzzword-heavy persona for your audience.
Okay, then what is it for?
The exercise is actually for you. It is mental conditioning to establish your internal authority.
Ah, so it's an internal anchor.
Exactly. Because when you're under intense pressure, say a crisis hits, or you step into a high-stakes board meeting, your brain naturally looks for a default behavior.
Right, the fight or flight response kicks in.
And if you aren't crystal clear on the unique, grounded value you bring to the room, your assumptions about your own worth get shaky. When that happens, you slip into ineffective extremes.
Like the dictator or the pushover we mentioned earlier.
Precisely. You might overcompensate and default to a forceful driving voice, becoming overly assertive because you feel you have to prove you belong there. Or you might default to a passive, supportive voice, just shrinking away and trying to please the loudest person in the room.
So writing it down literally proves to yourself that you belong there, so you don't have to perform.
It gives you the quiet confidence to just be present. You don't have to shout to be heard, and you don't have to hide to be safe. That quiet internal authority is the absolute essence of true leadership presence.
Okay, so once a leader has aligned that internal story, how does that internal authority manifest visually in the physical world?
That's a great question.
Because we are highly visual creatures. And a personal brand is very often reinforced through strategic appearance choices that telegraph your core values. It acts as this visual shorthand before you ever even open your mouth.
Steve Jobs is the classic textbook example of this from our sources. He utilized a signature minimalist outfit, the black turtleneck, the jeans, the sneakers.
Right?
And that wasn't just a lack of fashion sense. It perfectly mirrored Apple's clean aesthetics and their core Zen values of stripping away the unnecessary. His visual brand ensured his clothing never disconnected from his central message.
Jobs used minimalism to project focus, but I want to look at an equally powerful but totally different modern example from our sources, and that's the Sunda Brown Duckett, the CEO of TIA.
Yes, a fantastic example.
She authentically presents her cultural roots in the boardroom. She wears her hair in long braids. She brings her whole cultural self into spaces that historically demanded that bleached-out professionalism we talked about earlier.
And to understand how system-shifting Duckett's visual branding really is, we have to look at the mechanics of cognitive load.
How so?
Well, historically, professionals of color, who currently hold only about 11% of executive posts in corporate America, have faced an environment where executive presence required completely sacrificing their identity.
They had to code switch all day long.
Exactly. Think about the immense mental bandwidth required to constantly monitor how you speak, how you wear your hair, and how you gesture, just to make the dominant culture comfortable.
It's exhausting.
So when Lucinda Brown Duckett walks into a boardroom wearing braids, she isn't just making a fashion choice. She is utilizing the psychology of permission.
Oh, I love that phrase, the psychology of permission.
By normalizing an authentic trait at the CEO level, she completely removes the expectation of code switching for her subordinates.
She literally gives them their operational bandwidth back.
She does. She demonstrates that executive presence does not mean erasing who you are. It means amplifying your authentic values. It's just a brilliant example of how a leader's personal brand can dismantle an exhausting corporate standard and actually improve the psychological safety of the entire organization.
So bringing all of me sounds like the perfect ideal. Just be yourself and everyone thrives. But our sources warn us that this philosophy actually carries massive hidden risks.
It does. It's not that simple.
We are walking a very delicate tightrope here, which Herminia Ibarra calls the authenticity paradox.
Right. And the paradox exists because having to carefully curate a persona for ubiquitous social media can severely clash with a leader's private sense of self. Furthermore, if you manage that brand too tightly, if it becomes too slick, too polished, or just too perfect, you cross the line from curated to fabricated.
And a fabricated front completely destroys trust. Ibarra's research highlights a fascinating trap called the true-to-selfer.
Oh, the story of Cynthia.
Yes. There is a case study about a general manager named Cynthia who took on this huge new role. And she believed in radical transparency, right? In bringing her whole self to work. So on day one, she bared her soul to her new team.
Literally day one.
Yeah. She essentially told them, I'm scared, I'm overwhelmed by this promotion, and I desperately need your help to figure this out.
Because she thought she was building a brand of vulnerable, authentic leadership.
But it completely backfired. She lost all credibility immediately. Because her team didn't want a friend to trauma dump on them. They wanted a confident leader to guide them through a major transition. She drained their confidence by sharing too much too soon.
And Cynthia's failure highlights the really critical tension between authority and approachability. Leaders who rigidly cling to one unchangeable true self, those true-to-selfers, they fail to grow because they confuse authenticity with full disclosure.
Which are definitely not the same thing.
Not at all. Effective branding requires the maturity of discernment. You have to view yourself as a work in progress. Ibarra contrasts the true-to-selfers with chameleons.
Chameleons, right.
Yeah, these are leaders who are willing to adapt their style, borrow communication tactics from mentors, and essentially play with possible selves until they find an authentic style that actually serves the new challenge they are facing.
Here's where it gets really interesting. It's the difference between being genuine and being unfiltered. If your brand is too slick, people reject it. If it's totally unfiltered, people lose faith in your competence.
That's a tough balance.
It is. We all know what it feels like to look at a heavily photoshopped image on a magazine cover. Even if we can't name exactly what is wrong with the lighting or the pixels, our brains subconsciously register the inauthenticity. We just know it's fake.
And we can actually explain the mechanism behind that feeling using hard neurological science from our sources.
Yes, this part blew my mind.
Paula Niedenthal and James Gross conducted research on how the human brain processes fake emotions. When a leader flashes a fake smile, like a highly curated, perfectly managed brand expression that lacks genuine warmth, employees don't just find it annoying, their bodies actually experience a biological stress response.
It triggers a literal alarm bell.
Exactly. We have mirror neurons in our brains that are constantly scanning the environment to resonate with what another person is truly feeling. If a leader projects a slick, overly managed persona that doesn't match their internal emotional state, the disconnect triggers the amygdala in the people watching them.
Employee blood pressure literally increases.
Yes, and their cortisol levels spike.
Yeah.
Your team's bodies will literally reject a fabricated brand.
That completely reframes the stakes here. An effective brand isn't just about looking good. It must remain deeply rooted in genuine connection and warmth.
It has to.
The research proves that warmth and trustworthiness actually build influence faster than pure competence. If your mirror neurons are telling you a leader is faking it, you just won't follow them no matter how impressive their resume is.
Without a foundation of trust, you might get outward compliance, people doing what they're told so they don't get fired, but you will never get private conformity to your vision.
Right. So to synthesize all of this, From the biological stakes of the authenticity paradox to the systemic impact of visual branding, we can look at this through the specific lens of the Insight for Alignment frameworks.
Yes. Insight for Alignment is a leadership methodology that focuses entirely on internal-external coherence. It argues that building a personal brand is absolutely not a marketing exercise.
Not at all.
It is an ongoing practice resting on four pillars.
The first pillar is presence. This is the raw ability to show up fully in the moment, unburdened by the need to perform or code switch.
Right. The second is alignment. This is the daily work of ensuring your external visuals, your digital footprint, and your spoken narrative perfectly match your internal intrinsic values.
The third is discernment. Knowing the critical difference between a polished false front and genuine vulnerability. It's knowing when to share your fears and when to hold back and project the stability your team desperately needs.
And the final, overarching pillar is responsibility over reactivity. You are intentionally designing your impact. You are refusing to let external pressures, the stress of a new role, or the demands of the internet dictate your persona. You're taking ultimate responsibility for the energy and the authenticity you bring into the room.
We're going to pause for 10 seconds here, not as a meditation exercise, but as a strategic audit of everything we've just covered. Think about the last public communication you sent out, an email to your team, a post on LinkedIn, or even how you introduced yourself in your last meeting. A deliberate 10-second pause of silence.
As you look at that recent interaction, ask yourself this grounded reflection question. Where in your professional life is your external persona currently misaligned with your true internal authority?
We offer a gentle invitation for you to bring this specific insight into your lived practice or into your next leadership community dialogue. Consider viewing your evolving story not as a self-promotion task, but as an act of profound leadership.
Because a standout leader intentionally shapes how they show up to reduce the cognitive load and stress on everyone else.
Exactly. Whether it is through updating your bio to reflect your true value, making a deliberate wardrobe choice that honors your roots, or sharing an online post about someone you admire, a powerful personal brand is simply a clear reflection of your intrinsic motivations.
I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over as you step back into your day and look at the tracks you're laying down. If your personal brand was entirely stripped of your current job title, your company name, and your industry, what core human value would be left standing to guide your legacy?
It goes right back to the beginning, past the noise, past the exhausting highlight reels, and past the marketing hacks. What is the quiet, undeniable truth of your presence? Until next time.